I was going to ask, who's the loser in this?
Penn National did get a reduction in its tax rate, but it got the smallest reduction in its tax rate. It gets 6 percentage points knocked off because they're going to have to buy the slot machines themselves now, just like everybody else is. But the bigger way that Penn National loses is they now have to go into a competitive bidding process against MGM for Prince George's Casino. And Penn National owns Rosecroft Raceway, where technically the casino could go, but that's not in the way that folks are leaning. Pretty obvious that National Harbor is the preferred site for a casino, and MGM wants to develop that. And Penn National has its own interests in West Virginia to worry about. They have an enormous casino in Charlestown that attracts a number of Maryland gamblers, and if a casino is built at National Harbor, and if a casino is built when the casino is built in Baltimore, that's going to sap some of the market from that Charlestown casino, and Penn National's concerned.
I think also if you're a member of the General Assembly of Maryland, you go home and tell all the people that voted for you, or hope they will vote for you, that they're winners, because there's X amount more money in the till now from gambling that doesn't have to come out of their pocket in the form of taxes.
Alex, when you were at the session, you also came across an interesting constitutional issue that might be raised in a lawsuit down the road.
Yeah, whether or not it actually winds up in the courts, it's hard to tell right now, but E.J. Pipkin, who's the minority leader in the Senate, brought up the point when the Senate reconvened early Wednesday morning after midnight that in the Constitution there states there is a provision that says neither house of the General Assembly can be adjourned for more than 3 days without the approval of the other house. So the Senate was out for 4 physical days, from Friday night until Tuesday night. When Pipkin raised this issue on the floor, Senate President Miller rather stubbornly said, no, it's 3 days. I ruled that it's 3 days, even though Pipkin's counting out the physical days on the floor, and it equals 4. There's some issue about whether or not it's legislative days or calendar days, which there is a difference there. But speaking to delegates down at the Maryland Association of Counties meeting in Ocean City over the weekend, a number of arguments were laid out to say, well, no, it wasn't legislative days. There's nothing in the Constitution that mentions legislative days, and it's something that the court would have to look at. Now, whether or not they could actually overturn any decisions that were made in the Senate, which ultimately had to pass the bill at the end, that seems unlikely based on an Attorney General's opinion, but you may not have heard the end of the rushed way that this session ended.
And all outside factors aside, have you heard at all yet about the chances of this referendum passing on the ballot in November?
I don't think there's much doubt that it will pass. In 2008, 58% of voters voted for the limited casino program. I don't expect that things will be any different this time around, but just in case, MGM and trade unions that want to build a casino in National Harbor are going to flood the airways with advertising, on television, on radio. Penn National will probably be on the other side. A tax group out of Alexandria, Virginia, that's upset about casino owners getting a deep tax cut is probably going to be on the other side, but it's really going to come down to history, and Maryland voters have already showed that they support this casino program, and it's here now, so why not?
Maryland voters want Virginians to pay for some of our schools, as opposed to what we've been doing, not so much there, but in West Virginia and Delaware and Pennsylvania, with the money that our citizens have gambled in those surrounding states.
National Harbor is expected to draw a lot of folks from wealthy jurisdictions in Northern Virginia and tourists to Washington, D.C.
Right.
So the General Assembly has finally passed an expanded gambling bill. Gambling issues sort of bedeviled it for the last couple of years. What do you think happens now in January when when the General Assembly reconvenes for a regular session? Will we have put this behind us? Will we have more partisanship? What's the fallout from this?
I don't think you've seen the end of the gambling debate. Mike Miller hinted at that as he walked out of the Senate chamber early Wednesday morning. He was asked, wouldn't it be great if there was some way that Rosecroft and National Harbor could have slot machines? And he said, yes, I think that's a great idea. Well, this isn't over. I mean, this. I don't know that, but it certainly seems like as we go on, inequities in the system or in the casino program are going to be recognized. Casino operators are going to come back. Local jurisdictions are going to come back. Even during the special session and during a work group that considered expanded gambling over the summer, other counties like Harford County, Charles County were showing up and saying, why not a casino in our jurisdiction? You know, we could do, I think Charles County wanted to do something on the river. I mean, this opens the door for more gambling, if not anything else.
I think that's right. And once you have it, you have it. And somebody is always going to want to do something different that's not there. I mean, for example, I don't know exactly how they would deal with this, but all the fiscal experts in the state said, after they had looked at what they knew, what data was available, they said, we can't really predict what a sixth casino will mean. Maybe we should wait until we get more data. And of course, Mr. Cordish wanted that to happen, and Baltimore Sun wanted that to happen. And there's just so much pressure brought to bear on all of this. We've gone over it before. I mean, the number of jobs in this economy that you can pretty much guarantee, and 174 to 200 million extra dollars, and if you don't start, if they hadn't done it this year, there'd be 2 more years before you could get it on the ballot again. So all of that, I think, suggests that maybe people will hold their nose and then vote for it, or they'll just say it's the practical thing to do. I think the problem is down the road that once you have this, you have everything that comes along with it, and some of it is not going to be very appetizing. Not going to be very. A lot of people who thought they had to be for it are going to be sad that they were. I mean, I hate to make such a dire prediction, but it's happened in other states. And one of the other things that happens, of course, is when you get revenue from gambling, it can be a damper on people's willingness to pay the taxes that are needed to run the state, because they say, why should you tax me more? You have all that gambling revenue. But again, the experience in other states has been it's never enough. It's like the lottery. You know, the lottery was supposed to do this kind of thing 30 years ago. And of course it didn't, because the cost of government, of public education, of maintaining the roads, of everything just goes up. And people, understandably, particularly when nobody's gotten any pay raises in 15 years, they hate it when they have to pay more taxes. And it's very understandable. At the same time, you can't run the government without it.
So any more special sessions coming this year, or are we done with special sessions for now?
Let's all hope we're done for at least a little bit.
I think they would be too embarrassed. There's no issue that needs to come back. I mean, there was the pit bull issue that they basically punted on. I mean, one of the houses passed it and added amendments that the Senate wasn't willing to deal with. And, it's a fairly complicated issue, and it's one that really needs more time than 4 days. So they were probably smart ultimately not to act on that.
What's funny is the first issue that was mentioned for a special session this year was Governor O'Malley's gas tax proposal. The Senate President said something about February, about potentially coming into a special session later this year to discuss the gas tax. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. But
I think that's an example, really, of the way the gambling issue has crowded everything else off the stage. And so they would certainly want to get everything taken care of here that they can, so that you can grapple with things that are as difficult as more taxes and trying to keep your infrastructure in a position to keep your business running.
Alex Piles, Fraser Smith, thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you.
thanks.